Pacers legend Reggie Miller transcended the game of basketball with his ability to shoot the basketball.
Here's Reggie, here's the turnaround, here's the shot. Good!
Widely known as one of the best three-point shooters in NBA history, during his time in the NBA, setting the three-point record for most made three-pointers, setting the bar for the future generation of three-point shooters to break.
Yes! 2,561. And that is...
Again, here's Curry for the record. It's good! And there it is! Stephen Curry! The all-time three-point king in the NBA!
Despite the illustrious years he had in Indiana, times of adversity during his career made him rethink if he wanted to continue playing basketball.
You know, it made me sit back and start to think, is it all worth it? And I really didn't think it was.
In the 1987 NBA draft, the Indiana Pacers would draft sharpshooter Reggie Miller out of UCLA with the 11th pick in the NBA draft. After a remarkable 4 years at UCLA, averaging just under 26 points per game his junior season and winning the Pac-12 tournament MVP. But fans of Indiana weren't entirely thrilled when they drafted Reggie Miller, as there were a lot of Pacers fans who thought they would draft the hometown kid Steve Alford, who had led Indiana to an NCAA national championship win over Syracuse. And with the previous struggles for the Indiana franchise being in a playoff drought, missing the previous 5 postseasons before Miller's arrival. But Reggie would quickly become the franchise player they needed to revitalize the Pacers organization, as he would average just under 25 points per game on 41% shooting from the three-point line by his 3rd year, making his first All-Star appearance in the 89-90 season. But despite his individual success, his team success in the postseason would be a struggle, as Indiana would lose 4 consecutive years in the first round of the playoffs, as it would be the ascension of Michael Jordan and the Bulls, as they would begin to emerge as the best team in the league and the team to beat in the NBA. However, with the unexpected retirement of Michael Jordan in the NBA, it would open the door for a number of teams to get over the hump and win an NBA championship going into the next season. And after an abysmal record, the Pacers would rally together mid-season, going on a 7-game win streak and 8-game win streak at the end of the regular season to secure the 5th seed in the Eastern Conference, and ending their first-round series drought, sweeping a young Shaq and the Orlando Magic in the first round, as well as upsetting the Atlanta Hawks in 6 games, who were the #1 seed in the Eastern Conference, and were tied with the Knicks for the 3rd best record in the NBA in the regular season, advancing to the Eastern Conference Finals for the first time in franchise history against a tough New York Knicks team, which would be a series of iconic performances and moments for Reggie Miller. After falling down 0-2 in the series, the Pacers would show the resilience they've had all of the postseason up to that point to tie the series at 2 games apiece. Heading back to New York for Game 5, where the most iconic Reggie Miller moment would occur, when Spike Lee would make Reggie Miller flip a switch in the 4th quarter of Game 5 after being down by double figures, as he would rally off 25 of his 39 points in the 4th quarter of Game 5 during their back-and-forth dialogue, as they would proceed to win Game 5 and take a 3-2 series lead on the Knicks. However, the Knicks would show their resilience led by Patrick Ewing to win Game 6, and in an intense down-to-the-wire Game 7, and the Knicks up 1 point after a putback dunk by Ewing, the Pacers would go to their prolific sharpshooter in the dying seconds of the game, but would come up short as the Knicks would win Game 7 at home to eliminate the Pacers from playoff contention. However, in the postseason of '95, they would face off once again in the Eastern Conference semifinals, with Indiana looking to redeem themselves after last year's loss to them, which would be another series filled with some of the most iconic moments in NBA history, cause in Game 1 and the Knicks looking like they were on the verge of securing a Game 1 victory in the Garden, Reggie Miller would do the improbable.
Miller for 3, and he got it. Reggie Miller with a clutch tray, and it's 105-102. And a steal. Miller retreats to the 3-point line. Tie game. No need to foul in that situation.
Indiana would go on to secure a 2-point victory and win Game 1, and would go on to win the next 3 games to take a commanding 3-1 lead on the series. But New York wouldn't go out without a fight, with Patrick Ewing hitting a game winner in the Garden to force a Game 6, and would win Game 6 on the road to force a Game 7. With all the momentum shifting towards the Knicks, the Pacers and Knicks would clash in an epic game that would go down to the wire, and the stars would show out on both teams. But in the final seconds of the fourth quarter and Indiana having a 1-point lead, the Knicks would give the ball to their star big man as he would drive down the lane and miss a layup, as Indiana would prevail and win Game 7 and advance to the Eastern Conference Finals. With another conference finals appearance and one series away from making it to their first NBA Finals in franchise history, they would have to defeat the best team in the East in the regular season, led by the two young stars of Penny Hardaway and Shaquille O'Neal. As Shaq would dominate the first two games of the series, as the Pacers would fall down 0-2 in the series, but Reggie would have two big games to tie the series at 2. After a 1-1 series split in Game 5 and 6 amongst both teams, and Game 7 being in Orlando, the Magic would blow out Indiana, hitting 13 threes as a team to advance to their first NBA Finals and eliminating the Pacers from the playoffs. Despite another playoff run falling short, Indiana would make their name as a championship contender. But the player who proved too much for so many returning to the NBA after falling short in the postseason a season ago would make making it out the Eastern Conference a tougher task for Indiana. But Indiana would surge through the regular season, winning 50+ games for the second straight season, as Miller would be selected as another All-Star for the second straight year as well. Landing the 3rd seed in the Eastern Conference, but with less than 2 weeks left in the regular season, Miller would suffer a concussion, a sprained neck, and a fractured orbital bone in his eye socket that required surgery. However, Miller would return to the playoffs early when not 100%, wearing protection goggles, but they would fall short, being eliminated by the Atlanta Hawks in the first round. In the summer of '96 and Michael Jordan's Bulls being the superior team in the league, the New York Knicks were rumored to have been very close to acquiring Reggie Miller in the '96 offseason, in which Miller was interested in, to join forces with their star big man, Patrick Ewing, to help defeat the team to beat, which were the Chicago Bulls, and win an NBA championship. But they also had another player that they were wanting to sign, which would be Allen Houston from the Detroit Pistons, which would shut the interest of Miller going to New York when he found out the Knicks signed Allen Houston. After back-to-back Eastern Conference Finals appearances a few seasons prior, things would take a spiral turn for the worse. Cause the following season, Reggie and the Pacers would struggle throughout the entire season in the '96-'97 year, failing to finish above 500 and missing the playoffs. And when negotiations for a new contract for Indiana's franchise player came into play, Pacers fans would show very little sympathy, as he would receive anonymous phone calls and be called racial slurs, which ultimately made him contemplate leaving the Pacers. But that wouldn't be the worst of it, cause when Reggie Miller would purchase a brand new large mansion on the lakefront of Indiana, with him and his wife's belongings moved into their new house in May of 1997, and preparing to move in with his wife being away from town, Miller would receive a devastating phone call at 4 in the morning.
There's a fire at your house. I'm like, no, there's not. I'm at the house. I'm at my house. He's like, no, your new house. I'm like, what? So I see all the smoke. I see all the helicopters out there. I mean, it was like the towering inferno. It was nothing but flames. I'm thinking, oh my God. I mean, what is this?
Hamilton County authorities say the intense blaze that destroyed Pacer guard Reggie Miller's home was no accident.
Reggie's newly bought house would be lit up into flames, destroying all of his items and memorabilia in his newly purchased home, leaving many questions to be answered, such as how was this fire caused? But shortly after, Miller would be informed that the cause of this house fire was arson. Luckily, Miller wasn't in the house at the time of the incident, as he was sleeping at his old house, but had he been in his new house, then that could have been potential murder for whoever set his house on fire. But the question remained of why someone would do this to the city's NBA franchise player. Was it because of the contract negotiations, or was it because the team was struggling? Weeks after Miller's house fire, no arrests were made, and Miller would begin to receive anonymous letters from people saying they were the one who started the house fire as a hoax. And after that chaotic situation with racial slurs, arson caused house fire, and anonymous phone calls and letters, the situation would make Reggie ask himself if it was worth continuing playing basketball or hang up the shoes and call it a career. And when he met with his general manager, he told him that he was planning to retire. But before Miller would make his final decision, he would get a phone call from his new head coach, and that would be the one and only Larry Bird, in which he would tell Reggie that he would respect any decision he made, but that the city and himself needed him to help get the Pacers back in track. So putting his trust in the Celtics legend, Reggie would decide not to retire and return for the 97-98 season, as he would help fulfill the needs of Bird rejuvenating the franchise after an abysmal previous season, becoming an all-star and winning 58 games that season to become the 3rd seed in the East, and would return to a familiar place that they've been before after defeating their first 2 opponents in the first 2 rounds, matching up against a dynasty that proved too much for too many teams, the Chicago Bulls. After 2 stellar performances from Michael Jordan in the first 2 games, taking a 2-0 series lead, Reggie and the Pacers would respond in Game 3, squeezing out a 107-105 lead after a run by the Bulls late in the 4th quarter to slice an 8-point lead to 1. But Game 4 would cause for another dramatic ending, with Reggie Miller hitting a clutch 3 to win the game for Indiana and tie the series at 2 games apiece. But after a split between them and the Bulls in Game 5 and 6, Chicago would prevail and win Game 7 to head to their 6th NBA Finals. But Michael Jordan would give Indiana a lot of praise. After another Eastern Conference Finals trip ending in defeat, Reggie and the Pacers would finally get over the hump. Indiana would beat the #1 seed in the East and defeat the New York Knicks to advance to their first ever NBA Finals. But not all storybooks have a fairy tale ending, because after a hard-fought 6 games, the Pacers would have no answer to stop the duo of Shaq and Kobe, as Miller and the Pacers would come up short, and Shaq and Kobe would win their first championship together. And Miller would go on to play 5 more years with Indiana and would retire in the 2004-2005 season after his last career playoff game against Detroit. Despite not achieving the goal every NBA player dreams of, winning an NBA championship, the obstacles and adversity Miller had to overcome off the court and still remain loyal to one franchise despite the ups and downs is why he had cemented his legacy as a Hall of Famer, one of the greatest shooters in NBA history, an NBA top 75 player, and lastly, the greatest Indiana Pacer to ever play for that franchise.